And I'm going to share my screen. All right, so our third webinar of our existence. Let me this. So these are the results that we have had so far since March 18th. Pretty self-explanatory. Don't want to dive into this unless there are any questions. And if there are not, we can keep going. Okay, looks like no questions. All right, so today we're going to talk about rolling options, what they are and what they mean, how do we typically do it, what's the best time to do it. We'll cover a few of those things. There were a few questions about that for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I'll try my best to cover different types of rollovers. So what does rolling option mean? Uh, so it's simply closing out an existing option position um, of an existing trade, either at a loss, sometimes at a profit, but mostly it's at a loss, and we are forced to roll that over. And so we are closing that position, and at the same time, we are opening a new position in the same stock. It could be at the same strike price or a different strike price, and most of the time, um, it's for a later date in expiration. However, there are some occasions where we can roll to the same date, and I'll cover that in a little bit. So in other words, like when we talk about, hey, buy back an option that was sold and sell another option, that's rolling an option. So we are buying back and selling another option. Like I said, at a different strike price and or a different expiration date. Okay, let's talk about the most common rollover that we do. This is typically a forced rollover for either a cash secured put or a covered call or even a spread. So when we are forced to roll over, essentially our option is at a loss, and either we are not looking to get assigned the shares or we are not looking to lose our shares if it's a covered call. And our option is about to get called or assigned, and our objective is not to let that happen. So we are forced to roll it to the future, either at the same strike price or higher. And I'll show a couple of examples of this in a minute. But there are some questions about what's the best time to do this. So like there is no like exact science to this. I mean, if we were to know how the stock is going to behave for the next 2 or 3 days before we roll over, then I mean it's in our best objective to wait, right? But obviously, stock market, we don't know anything on a day-to-day basis. We have some educated guesses that we can make, but as far as guarantees, obviously there are not any guarantees. So that's why, like, I typically abide by this general rule of thumb, which is bigger the gap between the current price and the strike price and closer to the expiration, that's when we are getting into more likelihood of an early call. So typically if an option is expiring, if let's say a covered call is expiring this Friday, and there's only like a $2 gap between the current price and a strike price for a $200 stock, it's not going to get called early at all, because the option buyer is not going to pay or give up that much theta by calling it 3 days early, or even 4 days early, or even 2 days early. Now, if that gap was $20, now we are getting into it, like more likelihood of an early call, where if we don't want to lose the shares, then we better roll that option sooner rather than later. So if it's a Friday expiration, and if it's a Monday or a Tuesday, and there's already like a $20 gap, then Tuesday, and then, like, at at most, I might wait until Wednesday before that Friday expiration, but most likely on a Tuesday, um, I'd look to roll it out to the future. Now, obviously, when there is a $20 gap, there are no good ways to roll that for a big credit, because it's a $20 gap. So to achieve a big credit, or even some credit, we would need to go out quite a ways away in the future to do that. Uh, so yeah, I mean, like, if an option goes in the money, I don't panic if it's just a couple of dollars or even $5, and I still wait to roll that up or roll that over. And let me quickly talk about an example. Uh, let's do it. So I'm on my Robinhood here, and we were in this situation a couple of weeks ago, where we had a cash you could put on coin with a strike price of 225 for June 21st. And if I'm not wrong, that week, so let's look at the calendar. So on the 18th or the 19th is when coin really um, had a big drawdown, and on the 19th or the 20th, um, it was as low as like 207 or 208. So a pretty big gap um, for a pretty volatile stock. Um, okay, what happened here? This now, if that gap had gone to like 20 or 25 and kept rising, then I would have looked to roll over this position, either the same strike price or a lower strike price to the future. But as it happened, the stock kind of stabilized around 207, 208, and then on the same day, it kind of started climbing back up again, closer to like 212, 213, and I kind of held off on doing anything that day. Um, or the next couple of days until Friday, I think it held off um, around 218, 219, had a somewhat of a climb, maybe even 220. And basically, I waited until the last couple of hours, or even the last hour, to roll this to 628. And based on some of the technicals that I was looking at, and also confirmed by JT, the technicals that he was looking at, coin was still in an overall bullish position. So I decided to roll at the same strike 1 week out. That allowed us to maximize our premium. We gave back 225 and got back almost $9. So a net premium of almost 675 or 670. Now, was it the right choice? I mean, in hindsight, it turned out to be right choice. But by the end of that day, by I think 4 p.m. Eastern, coin had climbed about 225, and I think it closed at like 226.5, and then gave up some gains in after hours. So obviously we didn't know that, and we didn't want to take a chance. So I decided to roll it out. I didn't decide to roll it up. I just decided to roll it out. So when we say roll up, we are talking about rolling up the strike price. And when we say roll out, we are talking about, or roll over, you're talking about rolling out the expiration date from 6/21 to 6/28. All right. And as it happened on June 27th, coin was climbing back up again, and we were able to close out that trade for 375. So we pocketed our very initial premium, and we pocketed the difference between 671 and 275 or 375. So we pocketed 296 in premium. And then I shared another trade, which was a personal trade that some people might have followed. I know some people did. Essentially the same trade. I extended it to the following week. Opened another put in the money put for 628, which I ended up rolling the next day because coin didn't go past 225 the next day. It was around 221. So I decided to roll it one more time. Again, the same concept. Decided to maximize the premium based on what I was seeing technically. And then as it happened, coin had a big day up today. I closed it for $100 profit for this trade. Obviously could have waited, but that's hindsight. Didn't know it was going to climb this far up. So I guess the moral of the story is if it's not a large enough gap between the current price and the strike price, then it it pays to be patient. If you like roll out 4 days in advance, you're giving up 4 days of data, right? Now, if the stock just keeps going down, then obviously you made the right choice. But at that time, coin had moved almost like 22 or $24 in a day and a half. And when it moves that much, um, there is going to be some amount of buying the shares, which will allow the stock to climb back up a little bit. So um, I made that choice to be patient and wait until the very last day to uh, roll it out. Any questions? Let me show another trade here. This is the Tesla covered call. Tesla had a big day up today. It's already at the strike price of 210, and we have 4 more days to go. So obviously this trade is at a loss. I mean, theoretical loss. We still have the 112 in premium. We could, if we decide to sell the shares at 210, obviously we're going to keep the premium. We are not going to get any capital gains about 210. But am I going to roll this out tomorrow? No, I'm going to wait. So yeah, it's something that I'm very comfortable with, especially when there are still 4 days to go and so much time remaining. 4 days in a weekly trade is like more than 70% of the time remaining. So I am deciding to wait, and if it comes to it, I'll most likely roll this position up and over. So I'll roll it to a higher strike price and further out expiration. Now, depending on where Tesla is on Thursday or Wednesday, I might decide to do it a couple of days early, or if it's around the same price, 210, I'll decide to wait until Friday to make a decision. Any questions? Let me check the chat window. Nope. Nothing here on the chat. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the other type of rollover. So this is what I call get your shares back kind of rollover, where um, we have sold an option and it's going to expire worthless if you don't do anything. So we are already on a Friday for an option that is expiring on that date, and it's going to expire worthless if we don't do anything. But the stock is, so let's say this was a cash you could put, and there was a $10 gap between the current price and the strike price, and there is not going to be any jeopardy to our strike price. But if on the same day the stock had gone down, um, that's a good day for us to like maximize our premium for the next week. So what I like to do is I'll roll the option by closing the current cash you could put, and I'll roll it to the following week, either at the same strike price or maybe lower or higher, depending on how comfortable I am with the strike price. But essentially, what I'm doing is uh, not waiting until Monday to get my collateral back. In this case, because it's a cash you could put, we are talking about getting our cash into our account. And then essentially we have to wait until Monday if we are looking to sell another put for the same stock or ETF. But if it's a Friday and if it's a down day for that stock or ETF, I want to take advantage of that and sell the put using the same capital on that day. So I'll buy back that option, that cash you could put, for whatever the price is, $1, $2, 5, 7, and then sell it for the next week at a price of whatever is the going rate at that time. So that's what I like to call get your shares back kind of rollover. So yeah, any questions on this? So yeah, essentially this is closing it out early and selling the same same put for the same stock for the next week or whatever expiration we choose in the future. Let me see if I had an example built for that. Yeah, so I had this Amazon. So this is a put that we sold last week on Friday, and we are already at 60% profit. So if Amazon keeps going up or even stays the same for the next 2 or 3 days, this is going to get closer and closer to 100% profit. And then on Friday, if there is a somewhat of a drawdown or even a big drawdown in Amazon, because there is not much time left, our option is still going to expire, most likely worthless if we don't act on it. Or we can buy back for a couple of dollars and look to sell another Amazon put for July 12th. Using the same capital, we didn't have to wait until Monday to sell another put. Now, Monday may or may not be as good of a time to sell a put, or maybe it might be a better time, but we don't know that, right? So what we know is on that Friday, it's a pretty good time to sell another put. So rather than wait until Monday to take a chance, um, I like to close out this position and sell another put for the next expiration. So this is kind of what I call get your shares back or get your cash back and sell another option, essentially a rollover, buying back the option and selling another one. Questions? Okay. Nope. Anything in the chat? I do not see any question. Okay. And then there is one other type of rollover. This is what I like to call get extra premium rollover. This again, the option is going to expire worthless if you don't do anything, whether it's a put or a call. The current price is a lot higher or lower, depending on whether it's a call or a put, than our strike price. So there is an opportunity for us to collect some extra premium if we decided to roll up or down, depending on whether it's a call or a put, a covered call or a cash ticket put. It's an opportunity for us to roll up or down our strike price for that particular option. So in this case, we are choosing the same expiration date and a lower or higher strike. We'll go through an example in a minute. Essentially to collect more premium. Now, this obviously brings an additional risk element to it, right? Because we are intentionally moving the strike price closer to the current price. Now, if based on our analysis, looking at the technicals and based on the sentiment of that stock and based on the sentiment in the world market, if we feel like, hey, if we roll down an option by a couple of strikes, it's still going to be pretty much in a safe zone. And if the extra premiums make sense, then it might be worth it. But obviously, it's an element of risk, an extra risk that we do not need to do, but we are just choosing to collect some extra premium. Let's walk through an example of that. Okay, so there is this AMD call that we have. So we sold this on 6/28 for 50. Oh, that's weird. $57, and right now it's at 7. So the strike price is 175, and the current price of AMD is 157. So it's a very big gap between the current price and the strike price, and essentially there is no risk that we know of right now to our strike price. So could we decide to? So I'm going to go into this roll this position. I'm going to keep the same expiration, July 5th. So we are buying back to close this 175 call for 7 cents per share or $7 per contract. And okay, yeah, market just after hours closed. Okay. And if I'm feeling like the sentiment around AMD in the short term is not as great. And I'm okay with taking that extra bit of risk by lowering my strike price from 175 to 170, or let's say 167 and a half even. That allows me to collect, because there are 3 contracts here, allows me to collect $51 extra. Now, this is in addition to the other premium that we had already collected. So initially we had collected 57 times 3. So what is that? 57 times 3 is 171, which is what we already collected last week for selling a covered call at 175. Now AMD moved down, so we are choosing to sell a covered call at 167 and a half. So this 51 is in addition to that 171. If we don't do anything with this call, it's going to expire worthless at 175, and we are going to pocket our 171 in premium. But if we decide to roll this down to 167 and a half, same expiration, we are able to collect $51 extra, and most likely, I mean, the delta for this is still very, very low, less than 10%, less than 10 delta. So we are choosing to go from a delta of 0.02 to a 0.08. So an 8% likelihood that this is going to get breached by this expiration, which is not a very high likelihood. So again, this is a choice that we can make, and we don't have to, but in order to collect some additional premium, it's a choice that we can make. I don't do this very often, just because, like I mentioned, there is um, some element of risk there, especially if I don't want to lose my shares of AMD at that price. But occasionally, based on short-term sentiment, um, I'll decide to um, do it to collect some extra premium. I'll decide based on if the premium is worth it. Is an extra $17 for each contract worth it? Probably not. In this case, it's probably not worth it. But if this was closer to like $30, $35 for the same distance in strike price, now that becomes almost $100 of total premium for 3 contracts. Then I might be inclined to do it, or at least think about doing it. But at $51 total for 3 contracts, I would definitely not do it. But I just wanted to present what's out there, what the choices that you have, right? So do this very occasionally if you really feel like you have a read on the sentiment of that stock in the short term, and you have a pretty good gut feeling that it's not going to, even if you lower down your strike price, it's not going to breach your strike, the lower strike. Now, I might do this on a cash secured put on a very strong stock that I have a good feeling about for the future. But again, it would need to make sense. So let's take this as an example. Amazon, I have it based on how everything is lining up. There is very low likelihood that Amazon is going to go below 192 and a half by this week. Am I comfortable enough selling they put at 195. Let's look at it. So it's an extra almost $60, $57 for one contract. But because this brings us very close to the current price, I'm still not inclined to do this. If this was, if the strike prices here were increments of like $1 instead of $2.50, and if you're getting the same kind of dollar value by increasing the strike to 193.5, then I think I might do it. There's still enough gap between the current price and the new strike price, and there is enough value for me to do it. At 195, even though I have a feeling it's not going to go even below 195, and if it does, I can still roll that out to the next week at the same strike. But I don't feel like that adventurous. So I at 195 I would not do it. If it was 193.5, I would seriously think about doing it. Okay. Any questions on this? All right. Anything on the chat window? Nope. Okay. I believe that's all I had. Yeah, that was the last slide. Are there any other questions that Melissa or JT that you want to talk about?
No, Mac, I think you covered basically all the different roles that's known to man. I think pretty
Yeah.
comprehensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've covered it with all encompassing ideas for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great job. Great job.
Thank you. Melissa, anything else? If not, we can wrap up. Okay, so I will post the recording of this in a couple of days or tomorrow, and then the next option or next webinar will talk about there was some interest in discussing option Greeks, so we'll talk about option Greeks, and then maybe what we'll do is I'll also bring out a trade that a couple of people wanted to talk about, so I'll bring that out as well, just because if we have any additional time, we'll touch on that.
Great. Mac, I thought of something while you were just speaking, if you don't
Yeah,
mind, on rolling.
yeah,
And I know we do have an additional guest, I think, still here with us. So
yep,
maybe this will help, because I know in the beginning when when rolling was being taught, in certain circles, to some people, they felt as though it's not it's not taking a it's not really taking a loss when they roll, because they basically rolled it out into another position. And
yeah,
I know it cost me on a few occasions when I first started to roll, in that I
yeah,
thought, because of the price I was looking at after the roll, I'm like, wow, I'm already in the money 2 days later, when the stock hadn't really performed for me. But it just, because the price you get once you roll, if you don't keep good track of your pricing, you could actually get duped into thinking you're in the profit after a roll when you're really not.
yeah. So exactly. So you definitely need to keep track of how much you're giving back and how much you're gaining,
Yes.
and sometimes in a rollover situation, it might not be a week or 2 weeks. You might be doing that for a long time, right?
Right.
Just ask me on some of my covered calls of like Apple or Amazon a year and a half ago. And that's why I don't feel comfortable selling those covered calls anymore, just because I was like, you know what, it's not worth it, because I don't want to lose my shares. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's a great point that when you are forced to roll over, it's not a winning trade, right? Because you are only choosing to roll over because you are losing on that particular option. And essentially, you are just buying more time. So whatever you're giving back, you got to keep track of that and not just keep track of what you gain from the new trade, right? Because you're giving back a significant amount of premium to be able to sell another option. So
Exactly.
yeah, definitely yes.
How do you, sorry, can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
yeah,
Uh, So, how do you like keep track? Do you do like spreadsheet? Like,
yes. So it's the same spreadsheet that if you've seen on our Discord in the trade tracker. Uh,
oh, okay, no, okay.
so it's this. So go into our Discord, and in fact, let me just show it to you here. Okay, so if you go, so the weekly results, these are the weekly results that I post every week. And
Mm-hmm.
then the trade tracker is where I put the entire spreadsheet, which has all of our trades.
And
So
it also has the rolls on there.
yeah, so so the way I uh, do a rollover is on this. So let me go back to this coin. 671. So we gave back 225 and we got paid 896. So either you can have two line items for that, this as a loss, and then you have 896 as a new line item, or you just have the net of that, which
Okay.
is 671. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to ignore this and just capture this in your spreadsheet. If you capture this 896, then you got to capture the 225 debit as well. If you just capture the net, then that's fine, because that's basically taking that into account. 896 minus the 225, so that's 671. So in this new trade, um,
And not to interrupt you, Mac, but it's true that some brokers handle those differently too. So for
yeah,
example, like, yeah, that's nice how Robinhood does that for you. I use Thinkorswim predominantly, and it doesn't do that for you. That's why it really makes sense that you really have to keep good records. Melissa, if you don't mind me asking, do you use Robinhood?
No, I use interactive brokers.
Okay, Matt probably is familiar with that. I don't know how they book it, how they show it for you.
I actually haven't seen it before. I know a lot of my clients use it abroad, but do they show it like this, Melissa?
No, I actually am having trouble with them because they changed. So like they changed it. So you know when you do like an iron condor or something and it has a bunch of spreads or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you call it, like it, so it spreads,
Legs,
it
yeah.
doesn't do it as one trade. So when I close the position, you can't just close it together.
You got to
Um,
close it one leg or two legs at a time.
and it's really difficult because then sometimes, um, it's because if you do one or the other, it could throw your account off, and then it's like can be off, like be in like margin warning because you know what I mean?
I think so. Are you talking about like if you just close one side of the iron condor and
Yes.
yeah, so yeah, if we do that, then you're leaving the other side open, right? Which
Yes.
essentially makes that into a spread, like a debit or a credit spread, whether it's a put or a call side.
Yes.
So I think that's another thing that we can touch on next time. But here we're talking about slightly different. Like when I think what JT was talking about is so JT, correct me if I'm wrong, on Schwab or TD Ameritrade, they show this as two separate transactions, right? Minus
Right.
225 and plus 896.
Yes, and you really do have to keep track of it, and you're either by hand, in a just a notebook, however you want to do it, Melissa, or by a spreadsheet like Mac has everything so nice and neat. But you definitely want to write down the price you're getting out at to close the losing trade, and then the price you're getting for the new trade that you're putting on, which is called the roll trade. And what you did, yeah, like Mac's right, Melissa, what you're bringing up is kind of different. It's what happens when you close, let's say, an iron condor. If you don't close it as one, and you're closing, let's say, the long side, you're leaving the naked side open, they're going to look at it as a potential margin issue. But like Mac said, that's another topic. But
Yeah.
when you go to roll, Melissa, just make sure you're writing down how much you're paying to close that position, and then write down or enter it into your spreadsheet how much you're getting for that new opening position, which is called the roll trade, so that you can keep accurate track of when you go to close that new trade, are you actually closing it for less than you paid, less than
Right.
you received?
Okay,
Is
but
that
should that be an additional spreadsheet than the profit and loss one, or the
So
same?
so you can either enter that in the same line item if you just do the net, or if you want to keep track of both, then it has to be a separate line item. Where
Okay.
so in that case, what the way I could have done it here is let me just quickly. So it was this rolled over trade. So what that could be written as, I'm just going to copy this here. Ignore this because that was a separate. Let's see here. I'm going to turn off the recording for the webinar just a sec. And I'm going to share. So this is the one that was rolled over, right? So here, I would have done, so I took a loss of 225. So initially I got 171. Now I'm closing that at a negative 225. So I got a $54 loss. And then I'm opening up a new trade for 896. Does that make sense?
Okay, I get it
So
now.
if you do it this way, then you need to keep the debit on like as a separate transaction. This was one transaction, and now you're taking a debit there, and this was a negative 54. Now instead of rolling over, now this is, you can close this, and this is a new trade at that time. So now it's closed, but at that time it's an open trade where you got $896. You took a $54 loss in that. So altogether, this one trade generated $467 for us. Whereas the way I was looking at, where I was marking it is I kept this at 171, but instead of marking this as 896, I only chose to put the net credit 671. So you got to be aware that, so what some people might do is they forget about this and then they say, hey, I got 896 here. And in reality, they did not, right? They go to account for the loss of this trade,
Mhm.
which for me, I'm accounting for in this line by marking this as 671, which is the net credit of this.
I
So
get it.
yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of just treat it like two different trades, but then you mark it over there as a rollover.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So if I add these two, it will add to it the same amount, 467. But the way I'm marking it is I'm marking this as a roll, and the reason I mark it as a roll is so that allows me to compile like a list of like, hey, how many times did I have to roll that particular trade? It allows me to keep track of that. Because if I when I mark it as closed, it's essentially closed. When I mark it as roll, I know that, hey, I had to roll that X number of times.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes, it
Okay.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more organized because I couldn't figure out how to do it.
Yeah, and I think the example that you brought out, we'll look at next time. I'll come better prepared with an example. But unfortunately, Robinhood, I mean, fortunately for me, it allows me to close out like an entire like Iron Condor in one like click of a button by just closing the position. But I know not all brokers allow that. So maybe that's something. I think you scheduled a class, right?
Yes, in August.
In August. So if there is a time that comes up before that, I'll let you know. But
Yes, I was gonna
yeah,
ask you that. Yes.
actually there is a time. Let me get back to you tonight. Somebody
Okay.
wanted to reschedule their session. Let me DM you or email you tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys. Yep. You too. Bye.